Hello, friends. So I promised you a very quick, um, I promised you a lifestyle update. This is going to be a bit of a ramble. Um, in short, I've started studies with the ancient order of Druids in America. And how I got there is a very long story. Um, I've been circling around Druidry for a very long time, and it just seemed like the right time to take the step of formalizing my studies. So we'll back up a little bit and I'll explain a little about like my personal spirituality and like what that's going to mean for my life going forward in the channel as well. Um, I am from a mixed religious family. My mother is Christian and my father is Muslim. And my mother was raised in different Christian denominations. She had some foster homes. And so there's a whole gamut of different of views of Christology and so on, theology, and all in the Protestant vein in some way or another. And I wasn't raised in a particular faith. I was encouraged to choose Islam or Christianity, basically. My father was influenced later in life by people who were more conservative, and they instilled in him this idea that if I wasn't also Muslim, that it was a failure on his part. And so he became a little bit more judgmental about my not being Muslim. However, I was practicing Christianity in secret when I was growing up. During high school, I was a member of the Interschool Christian Fellowship. I didn't really. I was baptized as an adult. Um, when I was still in high school, I chose to be baptized in the United Church of Canada. Now, the United Church of Canada, it has a very liberal scope, so you can actually be an atheist. It's just so long as you are a seeker of answers or a seeker of like your own personal philosophy. So you really, at the far extreme end, you don't really have to be what most people would consider a Christian to be a member of the United Church of Canada. Um, but at the time, I definitely identified as a Christian, and that brings me to the current day, which is um, or not the current day. Like I won't skip over everything, but um, I did have a crisis of faith where it was Zionism in particular that caused me to reject a lot of what I had believed in up to that point. Um, there were a lot of people who were telling me things like that it was a miracle and it was a wonderful thing that my family were ethnically cleansed from their homeland. And so I sort of was not able to vibe with any of that anymore. I can't, even as an adult, I have no intention of going to church because the churches around here are very much Zionist. They make no pretense about that. And so it's always, even if they seem very accepting and inclusive of other kinds of difference, it's like, are they going to be racist about Palestinians? Is always at the back of my mind. And it's been like, I would say 90% of the time it's been the case. So um, that drove me away from actually attending services. But I always felt a little more philosophical in my approach to life. And the services that I did attend were not really deep enough. Um, they didn't really answer. Like, for example, when I talked with the minister who baptized me, I asked him questions about the church, and he just laughed and said, "Oh, you're going to be a hard one." And that was it. He never answered any of my questions. So, um, and with my mom's tradition, it was more like about the music or the enthusiasm than about the ideas. Um, so I definitely became like agnostic, I would say, after my sort of confrontation with Zionism. And from there, I've been reading a lot of like Taoism is very appealing to me, and so on. Um, but I think what really helped was in the pagan circles, there's books about um, like theology, like that, or not theology, but philosophy, where you examine like what do you actually believe about divinity? Do you believe that the divine is something that exists in reality, and so on? And I have ideas which um, I would call myself a panentheist. So I believe that everything in the universe exists inside of God or of the divine. Um, I find myself really not comfortable with symbols, and this there is certain threads of Christianity, of Islam, of every religion that aligns with these beliefs, but they tend to be considered mystics by their more conservative counterparts. So I sort of think of it like a wheel where the outside of the wheel is where everybody has their differences of opinion about things. Like this is where the world of symbols comes in. So like what you do call the divine. Do you have a personal name for it, or do you consider it a force like the Tao? What is it? Um, and then as you go towards the inside of the wheel, towards the hub, you get further away from symbols and you get closer to the experience. And so that's where I find myself being drawn to. And it's very confusing for most people because they'll say to me, they know I'm Palestinian and they know that my father is Muslim and my mother is Christian. And so they immediately go, well, what are you? And they will tell me like in a binary way, are you Muslim or are you Christian? And they don't even accept that maybe I'm atheist or anything else. Like um, the answer is very complex. I consider myself culturally Christian, and that's been my milieu that I've grown up in. It's like the touchstones culturally that I have. Um, but the symbols do not work for me. And so a lot of um, I've also I've studied a lot of early church history, so I tend to know um, I know a lot of like the textual history of the Bible, so on. Um, and so I don't tend to take I definitely don't take scripture literally. I respect people who are of all different religious stripes. I think that there's a lot of empowerment that can come through religion. But a lot of what is set up in organized religion doesn't work for me. It's in fact, not that it doesn't work for me, but that it's harmful to me personally. And so I've always been practicing on my own, solitary anyway, um, and also very much a person who finds a lot of inspiration in nature from a religious or a spiritual point of view. And as a panentheist, um, I see the divine as permeating and sustaining the natural world. That the natural world exists because of the divine, and that it continues to exist because of the divine. Um, a bit like you are sustained by your breath constantly. There's no real analogy for these things. That's the problem with finding difficult symbols difficult. Um, so Druidry is not a religion, at least this particular strand of Druidry, I should say. It's a craft, is how they describe it. So it's a orientation, so that it can complement religious paths. Um, it's a series of practices that you undertake, and a orientation towards an earth centered or a nature centered worldview, and acting accordingly. So um, the course that I'm embarking on involves things like making changes to my lifestyle so that I am impacting the environment less than I am currently, limiting the harm that I do in my consumption of resources and so on. And there's several paths that are united in this course. Um, so I'll be documenting occasionally my progress with this new venture. It's not completely out of the blue. Like it seems like it is because I haven't really been like um previously. Personally, I was thinking of myself in terms of Palestinian folk religion, which was very eclectic and syncretic. So it was involving elements from many different traditions and even pagan elements. But you can't really call yourself a Palestinian pagan. There's no, um, the label doesn't really adhere. Um, it's not like a neo pagan faith where you have a pantheon. Like I'm not a follower of the Canaanite gods, for example. Um, so I used to call myself a heretic, um, personally, in my head, but not because that wouldn't really make sense to people other than me. um, but I think that the Druid label feels right now, anyway. Um, I'm not involved with historical reconstructionism, so I'm not intending to be doing things, and um, my practice won't be the same as what a druid in history would have done. It's all made up, what I'm doing. So I'm aware that certain people are going to find that fake, and that's okay with me. Um, I've been very eclectic lately in like last couple of years in my spiritual path, and so I find empowerment in making my own scripture, my own ritual, um, and using symbols that do work for me if I find any that do. Like it's very challenging. Like um, one of the elements of this course is that there is a spiritual path segment which is called the moon path, and that deals with meditation and ritual and spirituality, as opposed to the sun path, which is about the course of the year and celebrating holy days, and then the earth path, which is about actions that you take. So the way that you, um, if whether you drive a car or you ride a bicycle or take public transportation, what you choose to eat and when, and so on. Um, Environmentalism, basically. So in the moon path, one of the elements is to learn a ritual of protection. And that's my first, like, this is a really challenging thing for me because you have to choose symbols for this to work. Um, 4 symbols in particular. And I'm really struggling because the divine is something which is, to me, exists in nature, but beyond nature and beyond concepts. So this is beyond symbols. So, in a sense, any symbol would work or should work, because they're all just as valid. And so, a symbol in this sense is like a word, for example. So, I'm thinking of using just simply the word God. And instead of breaking it into 4 components, just saying God 4 times. Um, but it would be just as valid to use words from ancient Egypt or Greece or any of the pantheons or modern day religions. So I'm finding it difficult to find something that is resonating but is a symbol. Um, that's my first challenge, so to speak. The other things I'm very interested in, very excited for, like a lot of research on my local ecology. I'm really fascinated by just how, like, I know so little about where I'm from. And so I ordered like a ton of books to read, and tending, gardening is something that is part of this. So um, I'm really looking forward to it. I don't want this to go on too much longer, so I'll wrap that up here. But um, do stay tuned for my rambles about hopefully outdoors, because that's something else that I'm housebound because I'm taking care of my mom, and I don't get out even to walk anymore, really. So one of the elements of this course is to be outside more. So you'll see me having my little talks outdoors, instead of with the screen behind me. So take care. I'll see you next time. Bye.